if you're the team and the business that just never gives up and never stops, it's very hard to compete against. And we're essentially that team. We'll never stop. We'll always keep knocking on doors. We're always going to keep talking about us solving particular pains that our customers have, and doing that for millions of businesses out there.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of The Root of All Success. I am your host, the real Jason Duncan, and I have the founder of Salesforge.ai with me today, Frank Sondors, coming from places yet to be determined, somewhere in Europe, because he's traveling everywhere around Europe right now. And Frank, we're really glad that you're here. We got some great questions for you, but thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Yeah, I was just traveling around, going over to Berlin and then a bunch of other places. Q2 is definitely the what's called the event season. There's a lot of things happening around the world, and I just have to fly to different places to see the customers, investors, or you name it. So,
well, good. Well, enjoy your time in Europe. Where are you originally from?
Tiny country in the world called Latvia. That's where I was born. But I left the country when I was 16 and I moved to UK. So I'm sort of semi-Brit, semi-Latvian. Then yeah, I kind of traveled to a bunch of places in Europe. So typically based somewhere in Europe. But yeah, most of our customers or most interactions that I have in the world is typically with folks in the US. A bunch of customers we have on the either East Coast or West Coast. Yeah, that's a bit on us. So.
Well, in less than a year, Salesforge has gone from 0 to over 3 million in ARR, which is an incredible feat. Congratulations. So what's the biggest driver behind that rapid growth? And did you expect to scale so fast?
Well, this is my first business, actually, a startup, that I launched myself. So I guess the answer is no. I didn't think it's going to go that well, to be honest. And that, you always think, when you're starting your own first baby, the likelihood is, that it's going to fail is pretty high. But also at the same time, you don't think you're going to grow that fast, right? Because it's your kind of first rodeo, right? So honest answer is no. And this is also why we raised back. So even though we're always profitable, we did raise $500,000 because we thought we're going to burn cash, but that just never happened. So, and also apart from kind of going from 0 to $3 million in 12 months, we also got like 40 extra employees. There's 3 co-founders. We met through YC matchmaking platform, and then off we go. We went to 40 employees in about 12 months. So the honest answer is no. It was a quite an interesting journey actually to about $1 million in ARR. There were no employees in the business. There were just 3 of us taking it to $1 million. Then up until from there on, we hired some folks in support and engineering, but we still had 0 folks in marketing, sales, and customer success, so account management. So we got to $2 million, and at that point, I was like, "Damn, I can't be doing this anymore." I definitely need. We already had over 1,000 customers, and most of that came through PLG. And then we started to hire, a bunch of folks in sales, marketing, customer support, and that's it. We got to about $3 million. So yeah.
So your career started in politics and international relations before you started pivoting into business. Mm-hmm. So what led to that shift, and do you see any parallels between politics and high-level sales?
So my career just joining politics, it was very, very short-lived. So I studied, back in my days, international relations and security. So all about war and et cetera, et cetera. And I thought I'm going to be the guy that's going to work at the European Commission and NATO. And I did work at the European Commission, working on stuff. But then I realized the level of bureaucracy and the type of people that work in these organizations. And then I left after a few months, and then I never looked back. So, and then I joined the private sector and started my career at Google. And because I'm the type of guy that just likes to get shit done. So. And that's not something that you can do in these organizations. So yeah, then I spent over a decade literally in sales. So yeah, I started Google, and then I worked for a bunch of SaaS companies out there. So frontline selling, always selling some sort of piece of software, ads, or ad tech and all that stuff. And then I ended up having led a sales team of about 50 people before I started this company. And the reason why I really started it is because, so when it was all about, it was growth at all costs essentially back in the days, a few years ago. And this is why I had so much, headcount. you know, in my team, and I thought to myself, there must be a better way how you can scale a company, how you can generate a pipeline. You can have definitely fewer heads to attain the target. So from that pain, as a former VP sales, I decided to start Salesforce. So really, our vision is to help companies to attain their pipeline targets, but with the least headcount possible, and doing so what we call with the highest probability using big data behind the scenes, just like companies like Google, Facebook do. So yeah, that's what we're up to.
So when you were working at Google, SimilarWeb, Whatagraph, what lessons from those experiences helped shape your approach to building your own company, Salesforge?
So I would say the biggest thing that I didn't see that happens in the world of sales or sales technologies generally versus the world of MarTech is you don't use a lot of data sets, machine learning models, any form of AI, essentially, in the world of sales. Essentially, humans make all decisions in sales, and whether it was about crafting an email or doing things in a particular way, sending emails in random times of the day, and all that stuff, essentially. So this leads to a lot of human error, essentially inefficiency, or what you typically say CAC inefficient. We're very CAC inefficient. The CAC is rising. So that's the cost of customer acquisition. So essentially, acquiring net new dollars these days becomes more and more expensive due to various reasons. And I thought to myself, there must be a way to be applying a large sets of data um, that you can extract from the customer or from a single customer, and then maybe other lookalike customers, and then build big data pools, what we call data clusters, and then use those data clusters then to essentially as a training data to apply machine learning models, Gen AI models. And that's something that you can see in the world of marketing technology. So let's say Google, for example. So let's say Google Ads as a product. So within Google Ads, you can run these Google Ads campaigns. So campaigns that run on what's called manual bidding. So the humans set a bid, within the campaign, and then the auction runs, and then you may get some conversions, right? So the human is sort of accountable for the bids and for the results. But then a second type of campaigns have popped up, over the years, called the automated campaigns, essentially where you can set what's called a target CPA, so cost per acquisition, and then Google will use large, data behind the scenes, so the data essentially to then set the bids automatically, right? So that's exactly what we're sort of envisioning in our world, where we're essentially shifting more and more from what's called rules-based execution, so where essentially humans make decisions, over to execution that happens by big data lakes. So yeah.
What's the biggest misconception companies have about AI in sales?
So I would say there's a lot of talk on a lot of social media platforms that AI is replacing humans or AI agents. It doesn't matter. It's all the same kind of thing, right? So, but I think we all live in a capitalist society where we're looking to drive better margins ultimately, right? But to drive better margins, the biggest thing that kills your margin is a lot of labor that you have within the organizations. So what ultimately the all the stuff that happens around AI, LLMs, AI agents, etc., it does allow you to increase the output levels on per employee basis. And anybody out there, doesn't matter whether you're in sales or some other functions, finance, etc., if you're an employee that uses a bunch of AI tools, your productivity levels are significantly higher than those employees that don't use AI tooling. So I always, highly advise everybody that, and I always ask them to use even like a basic tools like ChatGPT, and et cetera, et cetera. And you'll be surprised there's still a lot of people that have never used even ChatGPT. But ultimately, those folks that are using some tools and basic tools like ChatGPT, their productivity levels are higher. They're rising through, the ranks higher. And so on and so forth. And then folks that don't use any form of AI capabilities, they are like being left behind. So that's definitely the shift that we're seeing, and I think the next wave that we're going to see a lot more this year in particular is where you're going to see humans working with AI agents in tandem to increase output levels, right? So imagine you're operating a piece of software as a human or as a sales team potentially, but in tandem you're also running these AI agents to help you achieve superior output levels. So that increases output and that also reduces cost per unit. So let's say in sales that would be, say, a meeting booked.
Okay. So what was the toughest challenge that you faced when you were scaling Salesforce so quickly, and how did you overcome that?
I guess when you're scaling that fast, and it doesn't matter how fast you scale, really, it really is hiring the right people. I think, I always say to run an org or a company, there's really three main things that you kind of have to think back of your mind. One is the people. So that's the topic that I'm talking about. But the other thing is what's called the process. And the third one is technology. Do you have the right tech, to scale the company? And do you have the right process? So we have the right process and we have the right tech. Now, where you will always struggle is the people topic. Um, so just like in sales, I typically say in sales, for every 10 salespeople that I hired hundreds of salespeople in my life and I also fired hundreds of salespeople in my life. And the typical stats is, for every 10 salespeople that you hire, one is a natural, um, 2 to 3 people can be trained up to be somewhat good as a natural, and then 60% is dead wood. So that's the stats for sales. Now, when you're hiring somebody, into a startup, the stats are very different, because you have different teams there, but still there will be a lot of people will be still coming and going because we're growing so fast. We need folks that are hungry, that love the speed, because this is like a bullet train. Let's say we're in Japan, we're jumping into this, we're on this bullet train, is moving very fast, and we're just going to stop somewhere. We're going to pick up really, the great people, and then off we go. But some people can't handle the speed. They're not in that mindset. You need to have very particular people with the right mindset, but also with the right skill set. And that's where it becomes very, very tricky to find the right people, because the supply of those individuals out there, is very, very limited. I mean, you're competing with a bunch of these other companies. So essentially, we have these talent wars going on, where actually a lot of good folks want to be working for the best AI companies, these days and stuff like that. So that's really the challenge that we're facing: really getting the right people into the business, keeping them naturally, retaining them, right, and growing those individuals.
Salesforce, HubSpot, and there's been other major players that have dominated sales tech for years. So what is Salesforge doing differently, and how do you see AI fundamentally changing the sales industry?
So that's a good question. So a lot of the what I would describe legacy tech, or the older tech, essentially, it's all built around bigger teams. So a lot of companies will typically charge per seat, or essentially the way that they've architected and built softwares is around, bigger teams, because bigger teams means typically more revenue that the company generate, right? So there's a quite good correlation. So a lot of companies, what they've been doing, over the years, and they still do today, a lot of them, is they're charging per seat, essentially, right? But there's a huge inefficiencies in seat-based pricing. Whereas the way that we architect the software is really where the output for the company, so let's say you've got a generating pipeline, really comes from consuming more of the software. So we charge for the consumption, actually, of the software. And you are able to achieve, as I said, significantly higher output levels by architecting the software in the right way, where you don't need that many humans to scale. You can just literally scale the software. So what kind of happens from a CAC standpoint, is that you're shifting the cost that typically goes towards labor, right? So hiring more humans, to then execute more and more, so do more sales calls, etc. The CAC shifts essentially from labor over to software. And what that means in absolute numbers, actually, you're spending less to acquire the net new dollars, right? And this is what we're doing. And we're not the only company. There's other companies that are changing the game, and they're charging more for consumption. And you can see a bunch of companies in the Bay Area and in other parts of the world, where you're seeing these leaner and meaner teams. They're essentially producing a lot more dollars per head. Due to the new tech that's out there, the large language models, AI agents, so you're able to achieve these levels that you have never seen in the past. And today, there's even companies out there, a bunch of AI companies predominantly, that are able to scale to millions and millions of dollars in revenue in weeks. Weeks, not even years, like us. So that we're definitely seeing that, and it's like crazy times that we're living in. But yeah, there's a bunch of companies out there that are able to achieve these interesting levels of revenue.
Your AI agent Frank, is modeled after you. So, what inspired that idea, and where do you see AI-driven sales agents evolving in the next 5 years?
That's a very good question. So yeah, it is modeled after me. So the first agent we named it after me. So I was, as I said, spent in the sales over a decade. So I'm essentially dumping all my knowledge, having worked in sales, over to Agent Frank, right? So and that's essentially the replica of me that we're selling essentially to a bunch of people. But the biggest problem that I see, and there's a bunch of other AI agent companies out there, but the biggest problem that I'm seeing is orchestrating the agent. So it's not the technology where the issue lies or something. It's about how does actually sales work, and how do you orchestrate that in an agent? It's a very difficult thing to do. And our agent is not perfect, and it still requires a ton of work to make it like really, really good. Um, and so where we are in the world today is, you can use an agent to achieve a specific task, but where we are shifting and where it's sort of progressing, is we are heading into this world where you're going to see what's called swarm of agents. So essentially, multiple agents working with each other to achieve even higher output levels. But yeah, we're using our agent right now within the sales team. So I have a sales team of about 3 individuals, but in tandem, I'm running the agent to naturally increase the output levels, and it's working pretty well. So yeah.
We just implemented an AI sales agent here in our company. We working with a company that reached out to us and presented what they could do, and it's really very clever what AI sales agents can do. Of course, I didn't know about Salesforge until I met you, but our guy, his name is Hunter, so we've named him Hunter, and he's doing a phenomenal job. We've even signed up. We've already had somebody sign up for our services as a result of Hunter's emails. So you've been very successful in building this company in a a very small amount of time to get to a large ARR. What do you think has been your one key that has unlocked that success for you?
Well, I would say it's most likely, there's multiple ways how you could probably answer this, but probably the best answer is like, you're really been doing a lot of essentially founder-led selling or marketing, essentially, right? So being always present, always building in the public, and always, talking about the problems that you're solving with your ideal customer, essentially, profile, right? So that's on LinkedIn. I kept, sharing a lot of different stuff on LinkedIn and making sure that folks follow along the journey. And yeah, because without the founder brand and without the founder led sort of selling, marketing, etc., I don't think we would have been able to scale it, to this sort of level. As I said, we scaled to $1 million without a single, employee, and we're able to do the same thing without any go-to-market team to a $2 million. So that's just an example that the founders have been really the main driver of the speed, the reason why it's been going so fast. But you can't really get to the levels of, let's say, $10 million. You definitely need to be hiring people, because things start breaking. When you start scaling, they start breaking, and you need to build proper structure processes, so you're able to scale 10 million, then 100 million, whatever. Yeah, so the founding team, I would say, is the main reason. But of course, one is a good team, but then we were going after really the good problems. So the first initial problem that we were going after was email deliverability, making sure that emails don't land in spam. Because think of it this way: what's the point of an AI agent, and all the great emails, whatever he's doing, if the emails land in spam, right? So so picking the right problem initially to go after was really what was the main driver, and then we only added agents later on, like 6 months ago, only, um, so yeah, so big pain, big market, being very aggressive, being very visible and social. That's really what has led us to $3 million in 12 months.
How do you personally define the word success?
So to me, success is something where you're very you essentially you're an individual. Somebody actually told me that on WhatsApp recently. Frank never gives up. And that's literally the type of person I am. My other two co-founders, they're exactly the same. We just never stop. We never give up. So if you're, and we have like over 100 competitors, by the way, right? So we're in a space which is like super crowded. It's actually one of the worst software categories in the world. If you're sending some sort of emails, even with the agents, there's a ton of AI agents already out there, right? It's very, very competitive. But if you're the team and the business that just never gives up and never stops, it's very hard to compete against you. And then we're essentially that team. We'll never stop. We'll always keep knocking on doors. We're always going to keep talking about, us solving particular pains that our customers have, and doing that for millions of businesses out there. And if you have such a determined team, and the team that's very aggressive, also that goes in the market and actually builds a product that solves a big pain, um, in the right way, right? So orchestration, I told you, is a big topic, right? So how do you actually build the software in the right way? So that's where domain expertise is also very important, because essentially there's a bunch of these also AI agent companies where you see, I don't know, kids from college, coming out of college, and they just build AI agents. but they've never been, selling anything. You look at their backgrounds; they've never been in sales. But VCs love, young kids building businesses. They just love that because they have a lot of energy. And I'm like, I also have energy. I think you can find people with energy. You don't need to. You have a 25-year-old kid building AI agents. But that expertise, meaning you've been in sales for a decade, you've been leading teams, etc. That helps a ton because you know how to orchestrate the software, because you need to know what people discuss in the board meetings, etc. Like without that experience, it's pretty hard to understand how to orchestrate the right, their agent in the right way.
So, do you, based on that definition, do you consider yourself successful?
It's hard to say. I mean, we're doing, better than 99% of companies out there. So, I mean, I guess from that standpoint, then yes, in relative terms, yes. However, I always feel like, something is not working, and that things are failing. Um, so I think also the success, so once you, let's say, but right now we have 40 employees in the company, right? So I don't think like, am I successful? I'm thinking, is my team successful? Do they have the right competence, the support, whatever, bunch of other things. You start thinking from kind of team level, because naturally, not everybody in the team is the way that Frank is, for example, right? So, and you have to think about how do you push people up, right? How do you make them execute better, how to make them more competent, how to make sure they're motivated, etc. And we have a bunch of days where it feels like the team's not motivated necessarily. So how do you, like, it's a lot of these sort of topics, right? So you have to start dealing with these human problems, essentially. So I talked to you about the people is the biggest problem, but at the same time it's the biggest success driver as well, right? Because building all of this, it's not anymore about Frank or the founding team. It's about the 40 people that are in the business. They have to build this thing, to get it to the next level. So in finding the right people for the business, it's really tough. And then having, as I said, to deal with what I call people problems. Um, I actually speak to a lot of founders out there that don't enjoy, just working with people, managing people, and all of that. And they always tell me, I rather talk to an AI agent. And I think there's a lot more people that I keep hearing just generally everywhere, that we're moving towards a world where humans, and more humans essentially, are more likely to be talking to an AI agent, which is kind of weird, I think. But that's essentially the world that we're,
Yeah.
going into.
Well, what's interesting about your position is that you are an AI company, and you said, well, the biggest challenge has been the humans that I'm working with. So how do you balance that out? I mean, how do you look at someone who says, look, AI is going to replace humans, and there's other people who say, well, humans are always going to be necessary. How do you balance that when you're in a AI company that relies on humans to execute?
It's a good question. So, I mean, if you look at our website today, you just go to Salesforge.ai, it says we are blending. And that's exactly, I think, so the former CTO of OpenAI is saying something similar. Actually, that we, as humans, we're going to be working with the AI agents together. So it's not about replacing, it's about figuring out a way, how do you do something together with the agents to just achieve superior levels and reduce cost, right? So that's really the answer to the problems that we're facing out there. And that's exactly how we are thinking about it. So the problem of what we call inefficient way of acquiring net new dollars. How do you solve that? So essentially, there's a bunch of companies that exist still today, the legacy companies that serve only the humans. And then there's a new wave of companies, specifically in the Bay Area, that are building a bunch of AI agents, and they fully disregard the humans. Like, essentially, you cannot run sales teams in those softwares. And we have this kind of called unique positioning where we accommodate the humans because we know you can't really fully replace them. And I think most sales leaders, well, pretty much nearly every sales leader I talk to is fully agrees that you can't fully replace the human within the sales equation, but you can figure out a way how to reduce that, right? So this is where the agentic capabilities come into play. And I also don't see a world where a really smart sales leader would use two different softwares to drive pipeline from an execution standpoint. So really, that has to live in one environment, just like a Google Ads account, essentially. So that's exactly what we're building, right? You're trying to figure out a way where, in one view, when you're running a campaign or a sequence, you get these humans, and that's their results, and then the next line item is like AI agents are running, campaigns, and then you can kind of do an A/B test, compare performance, and all that stuff, right? So, So yes, we're definitely what we call AI first company and human second. That's probably how we look at ourselves. But we would never say no to a human because we know it's impossible to replace humans. Now, the one thing I just want to say, maybe you can look at it from another perspective. When you hire, let's say, somebody, so into a business to solve your problem. So when I'm as a business owner, I have a problem. What I'm the first thing that I'm thinking about is, can I get an AI agent, like an off-the-shelf solution, to solve my problem? Is there a solution in the market that actually works? If the answer is yes, I'm going to pick that. If the answer is no, the second option is like picking one of these custom automation workflow tools like N8N, for example, or make.com, right? To assemble something. That's option two. Option three, because again, I don't want to hire humans, let me get a consultant or agency to solve my problem, right? Because you can plug them in quickly, even though they're more expensive, time is money as well, right? You can plug them in and they can kind of solve a bunch of different problems that you have. And the last resort is hiring a human into the business. So for me, when I have a problem, my last resort is to hire a person into the business. But the first thing that I'm thinking back in my head, can I use an AI agent to solve my problem?
All right. I have 4 rapid fire questions I want to ask you. So, Frank, I want you to try not to explain any more than is absolutely necessary. We're going to go through these pretty quickly. Number 1, biggest sales myth you wish people would stop believing.
That AI is replacing humans.
All right. What is your favorite SaaS tool besides your own that you can't live without?
Slack. I literally live in Slack every day.
Well, I'm going to have to insert. I hate Slack. I don't understand how people love it so much. I hate it. Every time I work with a company that says get in Slack, I'm like, oh, for the love. Anyway, that's my hang up. Okay. Number 3, what's one book that every entrepreneur should read?
Never Split the Difference, I would say.
Oh, that's a good one. Very, very good. I want Chris Voss to come on the show. If anybody out there listening could get me Chris Voss, I want him to come on the show. I'd love to talk to him. And final question. If you could have lunch with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, who would it be?
It's a controversial individual, but it will be Elon Musk.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to have lunch with Elon, see how that goes. Well, Frank, I know people want to get in touch with you because AI sales is all the rage. People are trying to figure out how to do it. If I hadn't been approached by the company that I'm now working with, I wouldn't have thought about it. And now, oh man, it's everywhere. So how do people get in touch with you and Salesforge.ai?
Yeah, it's just, if you have any questions, just ping me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach me. I'm also available in X. But otherwise, if you just want to check out what the agent does, you can literally just go agentfrank.ai and you'll land into a particular section of your site, get an email from Agent Frank, see for yourself, and then go on from there. So, yeah.
All right. So it's Frank Sondors, Sondors is how you spell his name. You can look him up on LinkedIn. You can look him up on X. And of course, you can go to Salesforge.ai. Frank, congratulations on what you're building, the success that you've had so far. And I'm also honored that you've been on the show today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
This episode is sponsored by Relay, the business banking platform built for entrepreneurs just like you. And if you're tired of traditional banks slowing you down, I want you to go check out Relay at therealjasonduncan.com/relay, and you can experience banking that works at your speed. Now, I've been using Relay for a long time. I don't know, probably a year or so now, and they are the absolute best experience in banking that I've ever had. You've got to go check out Relay. Check them out, therealjasonduncan.com/relay. All right, you know what time it is? It's time for another edition of JD's Public Service Rants. It's the part of the show where I call out the little things that shouldn't have to be said, but clearly they do. So if you're guilty of this one, consider yourself officially put on notice. So I'm talking to you, you office microwave fish criminal. You know, there's a special place in office hell for people who microwave fish at work. I've had this rule in all my companies for so long. It's kind of like lore. People joke about it. But listen, that smell isn't just bad. That smell is permanent. If you bring fish, you need to eat it cold or you need to go outside. But for the love of all things decent, do not nuke your salmon leftovers at noon and ruin the entire break room for the rest of the day. All right, that's it for today's JD's Public Service Rant. If you've got an idea for one, send it my way. And remember, don't be that guy. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Root of All Success. It has been a pleasure talking with Frank Sondors about his success with Salesforge.ai. Go check him out. And tune in again next time when I talk with yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, as always, I am the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Attention business owners.
Attention business owners.
Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. Cut your daily operations time in half. Improve your quality of life and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.